Hello, everyone, and welcome to EUphoria. We are in the middle of our Summer of Sci-Fi event where we have a month long of TTRPG content featuring futuristic science, space sort of gaming content that includes actual plays and some cool chats with some really, really cool people that I'm going to introduce in just a second. But just to start with, my name is Aida. My pronouns are she and her. I'm a Latina queer woman. I'm an immigrant in the Netherlands. I have tan skin, dark eyes, dark behaving hair, and I'm wearing a crimson top. New friend, who are you?
That was an incredible introduction. That was so fast. I am Samantha Webb. I am the head of brand at Modifius Entertainment, and I'm also one part of Black Cats Gaming, a small independent tabletop RPG publisher here in the UK. I'm a white trans woman with long brown hair, a white top, and I'm surrounded by tabletop RPG books.
That's a good place to be.
Yeah.
It's a good place to be. I hope those books are lovingly worn and used. I know mine are dog ear to hell.
It can depend, I think. Quite a few of them are like comp copies of stuff that I've worked on or brands that I've worked with. So some of them are just there for posterity, but some of them I've definitely have seen a lifetime of gameplay.
If I may ask, how many of those happen to be sort of sci-fi, space, futuristic settings?
Oh my god, a bunch. So I've got a bunch of Star Trek Adventures books because I
Mm-hmm.
worked on the line since 2017. I've got The Expanse. I've got second edition of Eclipse Phase, which I love the idea of the setting for,
Mhm.
but some of the mechanics, it's like too much for me. As I'm aging, I'm getting to that stage of like, I just need just tell me to roll like 2d6. That's fine. That's all I kind of need. What else sci-fi did I have I grabbed? I did have Star Wars, Edge of the Empire at some point. Um, We've got Acton Cthulhu. It's kind of not really sci-fi, but it's like modern as opposed to fantasy.
Cool.
But yeah, a bunch of different titles.
Expanse is definitely on my short list to play. I love that universe. I'm all for having Ava Sorella read me the dictionary laced with her profanity kind of
She's
world.
amazing, isn't she?
I I love exploring these universes in TTRPGs,
Hmm.
and yeah, I think that'll lead us to the first question. It's an interesting segue. Um, Given all these tropes and existing universes that already pre-exist in media, for example, how do you think that sci-fi settings uniquely perform in TTRPGs themselves?
I think they're definitely an underrated part of the hobby. So much of our hobby is focused on fantasy fiction,
Hmm.
and
Tolkien
Tolkien and D&D.
and like
So the kind of
Eurocentric settings.
yeah, Scandinavian influenced
Hmm.
and all of that typical kind of fare. But um, science fiction can do quite a lot for tabletop RPG like audiences. Um, and I think that it what's unique about it really is that it gives us a kind of glimpse into what are imagined or hopeful or what we're worried about for our futures. So
Mm.
rather than it fantasy for me is more kind of escapism, and as much as it can really effectively deal with themes that are to do with interpersonal conflicts, and all of that kind of juicy drama kind of stuff. Science fiction kind of gives us an opportunity to more explore about like what we could become, and so it's got that unique slant to it, I think, that fantasy fiction doesn't necessarily. um, and so, you can do that, I think, both in terms of personal exploration. Eclipse Phase does a bunch of that, where because it's transhuman, you can put yourself into kind of any body, biological as well as kind of built, mechanically or synthetically. Um, and so you can kind of explore that identity. You can explore identity that way, and you can explore personality that way, or what the physicality of what you might become. But you can then also explore politically what we might become. The Expanse does that a
Hmm.
whole lot. It's its biggest theme, right? Is that how are we all going to get on in the future? Um, And so there's a big range of stuff that you can do that I always think feels a little bit more familiar to me. And actually, I've always felt like science fiction is my like first
Oh,
love in terms of that. I grew up watching Star Trek with my dad.
yeah, been there too.
Um, yeah, and so I didn't read very much fantasy fiction, and really only became properly aware of Tolkien from the movies and like then playing D&D and stuff like that. That I really kind of got interested in it. But science fiction, I would, if you literally had to, made me choose, I think I would pick a science fiction RPG over fantasy, personally speaking.
I love the way you described it, that for you, sci-fi is helps us answer the question what we can become, what we
Mm.
humanity can become, given um, the most ideal formulations, aka Star Trek, where humanity supposedly surpassed all the negative things, got rid of diseases and climate change, and now we're just there, and not every, and we're still flawed. Or given the worst of situations, let's say something like Star Wars, which might be more familiar, broadly speaking, where political or other dangerous things makes you not the kind of person you might have been if you were in a Star Trek universe, a human, for example.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
love that
exactly.
dichotomy. I don't really get that in, well, traditional, those kind of Eurocentric, agrarian, but now there's a magical, mystical hero with a sword.
Yeah, absolutely. And like if you were wanting to explore themes that, kind of make us question because art in all senses, tabletop or whether you're going to a gallery or whether you're going to see like a play or a movie or something, already talks about ourselves in the moment. It tries to explore what we're like now.
Hmm.
And so a lot of science fiction as well as thinking what could we be, you then that kind of reflects on who we are now as well. So,
Exactly.
like, how does that inform how I see myself or what I think about myself or what I think about social issues that are going on at the moment? Um,
Like, will they change or are they further crystallized?
yeah, yeah, exactly. But, you know, fantasy tends to, if it's not about escapism, I feel like often tends to be focused more on, if you're actually, exploring kind of deeper themes along the lines of like, class structures
Hmm.
or power
Yeah.
dynamics, and stuff like that. And then, you can explore conflict on a larger scale. So I mean, one of the games that I've run the most is fantasy, and it's actually a Green Ronin's take on A Song of Ice and Fire.
Okay.
So they had the license for the books before the Game of Thrones TV shows were even like
Ooh, they
airing.
did it first.
Yeah, but so I played that a bit with friends, and then we streamed a long campaign of it over the course of about 2-3 years. Um, and really, that was about that kind of like power dynamics, um, how do people treat power when they have it?
Mhm.
Um, and how flawed can that be? You know? Um, so, again, we were exploring quite deep themes in terms of again, kind of conflict and some oppression and um what that means for the characters who were in that oppressive class of people. They
Yeah.
were lords and ladies and children of and all that kind of thing. So like what does that mean for them? All to the backdrop of the kind of Game of Thrones, like that world, basically.
Yeah.
And yeah, and so pulling on those themes again, George is it's very War of the Roses. It's very kind of British and European centric, um, and doesn't really kind of go outside that very much. And if it is, then it is something other. Like
Yeah.
Danny goes to Karth or across the Narrow Sea. There's strange lands with strange people with
They're
weird customs.
exotic, they're
Yeah,
foreign.
exactly. Yeah, right. Um, Whereas I think science fiction doesn't deal so much in the kind of like you say, that horrible, like exotic
Yeah,
thing. It deals with the unknown. It deals with things that have yet to be discovered, things that are strange to us at the
that makes
moment.
us feel small as the protagonists, as the humans.
Yeah, exactly. And so there's more impetus, I think, in science fiction to not just, romp around, the galaxy in this case, and shoot every alien you see, and like um, you know take over, or like if you're thinking of D&D, right? Like you go into a cave and like you kill the goblins and then you loot the gold and then you leave, right? That's kind of the basic premise. But with science fiction, you get more of a chance to, like, you see something you don't understand, you can investigate it, you can work on it scientifically, you can
Mm,
discover things, you can then try and figure out better solutions to that, I
because you have
think.
much more capacities. Even
Yeah.
as a quote unquote level one adventurer, you're going to have your borrowing tropes tricorder, you're going to have your cybernetic network you can tap into, etc.
Yeah, I just even not necessarily mechanically, but even thematically, I
Yes.
think there are bigger options, a bigger range of options for you, I think.
There could be, and I'm sure there are fantasy games that also do the things that were critical, but we're just kind of like, could be better. I'm sure there are fantasy games that go above and beyond. I'm sure that there are sci-fi TTRPGs that unfortunately don't go beyond, ooh, strange alien must take over for resources, must construct pylons. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm sure. We hit on quite a few interesting tropes actually. And uh, loosely defined, a trope being a cultural reference that sets expectations, provides shortcuts and cuts of storytelling. So when we say fantasy and Tolkien, shortcuts would be, touchstones like Hobbits and Lord of the Rings, touchstones like medieval castle with royalty, knights. These can often be used in tropes, and when we see the knight gallivanting on a horse with a magical sword, we, if you're familiar with this context, you immediately fill in the blanks about, you can make assumptions about the setting. What are some cool or your favorite sci-fi tropes? If you had to put all the best part of what you consider scientific, futuristic, space oriented, what has to be on the cooking list?
Yeah, I love that sense of like going out into the unknown, that kind of big black void that, has some pinpoints of starlight in it, but there just being this kind of like vast vacuumous ocean that you don't quite really know what's out there, and you're going to discover as you go. But the sheer size and scale of that is often
Mm.
something that I like represented. And it's actually really interesting that when I was putting together kind of briefs and style guides for the first edition of Star Trek Adventures back in 2016, 2017, that I was looking into what Gene Roddenberry had given in terms of guidance to script writers. And because I knew vaguely that there was this like Star Trek writers like Bible,
Mhm.
so I went out looking for it, and the internet has it out there. And so I managed to download like a kind of scanned copy. There was only a few pages, but it's kind of guidance about what writers should do and what they should kind of avoid. And it's great because it also leans into what we were just talking about, where actually he compares fantasy fiction to sci-fi, and what they are kind of how basically what I kind of came to, what I explained to writers was, if I could just replace what your premise is, what your outline for your adventure is, with castle, princess, knight on a
Mhm.
horse, it's not a Star Trek story. It could be anything. So Star Trek stories have this kind of unique thing about them that can't be represented. And so sci-fi, I think, by extension, has that too, where it can't really be represented in another genre. Um, and I think like space exploration is that thing. Um, and so I always love that kind of, getting a ship together, going out into the unknown. And so interestingly, I also really enjoy when like travel speed is
Okay.
played around with. I think it's a great excuse to kind of have faster than light travel, or like some kind of wormhole travel where you can just get places. And then you can just like drop in anywhere you kind of want across the galaxy and that kind of thing.
That's
But I
lovely.
but I like when saying like The Expanse or in Alien, they're taking into account both human beings and
Yeah.
physics as well.
Yeah, their biology, physiology, the s the limits of the body,
Yeah.
Yeah, the jumping, the going to sleep in Alien RPG.
Yeah, exactly. Um, and so, like, waking up and then, like, you've been asleep for like 30 years because you've had to travel between two planets. Like, that's always kind of really interesting to and kind of screws with your mind a bit. Um, and then, yeah, I loved the expanse in terms of when, like, particularly when they're fighting a kind of like space battle and you're used to ships all being on kind of one axis and just flying at each other like like aircraft are dog fighting and all those kinds of physics, and that just doesn't happen. Like it wouldn't kind of work. So like all the guns are pointing out sideways because otherwise the inertia from the gun itself is gonna slow the ship down if it was facing forward. So they arc all their fire out to the side so that they can kind of like correct the course and stuff.
Yeah.
And then if they're trying to pull a really like fast maneuver, they've got to worry about how many G's they're pulling so that
Mhm.
they're not blacking out or like literally dying or anything like that.
Those fights, I've seen the all the shows. I'm not caught up with the books,
Mm.
but seeing that has really ruined me. When I see any of
Yeah.
those space dog fights, I was recently watching Acolyte and the Star Wars fights they usually do, and I'm just
Yeah.
like, see, sure, you got to be a really extraordinary human person to do this. And then the Expanse
Yeah.
introduces other people who have different feelings, the Belta loaders, for example. And just like I love that richness. That's a really amazing story building point for me. I'm totally on you with that.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I can't stand just like bolts of light, like blaster fire, because it's like light doesn't work that way, and you don't get like a thing of uh of light. You get a whole beam. It goes at the speed of light, like so at the scales that you're kind of covering, that human beings cover, you're just gonna see that in a flash, and it's kind of gone, that kind of thing. So yeah, no, I always like stuff that's a bit more rooted in reality. I think
Mhm.
um, so that it's not such a stretch. Because I think once you start to get into the realms of um, on the whole, like kind of when it just becomes kind of magic again, um,
The inertial
kind of
dampeners or whatever.
yeah, like kind of a little kind of unexplained or um, at least Star Trek kind of excuses it with techno babble, like and matter and antimatter, and you're kind of like, yeah, I'm kind of following it. I kind of get the
We buy
in
it.
universe logic. But when stuff just becomes, and a lot of Star Wars is kind of like that, particularly with Jedi and stuff, where it's just magic. And I
Mhm.
know they try to kind of explain it with, little things in your blood, but like um again, it's that thing for me of if you can replace the tropes that you're seeing with their fantasy equivalent, then you might as well do it in another genre. There is something unique about science fiction that I think needs to be celebrated when
Yeah.
it's put into it.
It definitely gives you the means to catapult further.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think during this month we are also playing Scum and Villainy, and
Oh,
it's an evil
nice.
hat game, and they're also
Mm.
traveling across planets. And if I understood it correctly, faster than light speed is accomplished. There are giant space manta rays, and you essentially have to hook your ship up to their underbelly and you get carried through whatever highways they take. That
That's
was their
fun. Yeah.
creation.
Yeah. That's so fun. Um, and it's interesting as well what that like kind of what and which different authors kind of play with those mechanics because that's really fun because it's kind of rooted in like again like kind of biology and like it feels more I would say earthly, but I guess that's not the right word, but it's like
Hmm.
it I don't know, it feels a bit more kind of tangible and less kind of heady and kind of sciency. And Dune, does kind of
Yeah,
similar things with their navigators and stuff like that, don't they? So, but it's really interesting, I think, how the folding of space stuff like wasn't in Frank Herbert's original like work, and then David Lynch used it to represent what the navigators did
oh,
in his movie, and then Frank was like, "Okay, well, I'll just use that now. That's great. I'll have that." Um, but I loved how Denis Villeneuve did it as well in the recent movies, where you kind of just like you look through that giant navigator's ship, and or you've got the space scene around you, and then if you look through the navigator's ship, you can actually see the destination. So it's like they're kind of warping, space time as well, so that you can pass fairly instantaneously across those spaces or whatever. It was a nice representation of it, at least I think.
That's smart. That's clever. Yeah, I think I'm seeing where, for me, at least the way I interpret it, there is something beyond human capacity that still needs to be respected, that is
Mm,
bigger than us being humanity, and we have to ascribe to it. Because if
yeah.
humanity could just do everything and are the masters of everything, that's not as interesting. Where does the conflict? How do you get your own head from not exploding from its sheer size in terms
Yeah.
of ego, kind of
Yeah.
situation?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, speaking of egos. Speaking of egos, I was looking through the wonderful photos that Modifius had of some meetups, UKGE, I think a
Mhm.
company picnic, and having worked with people from Modifius from the teams, in coordinating APs and getting assistance. Everyone seems really amazing, kind, and accessible. Um, I have noticed, however, many photos like Woodicus and many other companies, those photos happen to be very male or mask centric.
Mhm.
And I'm talking to a wonderful, talented woman in front of me that, according to the photos at least, was in the minority. And I wonder if you could share a bit of your experiences on what it's been like as a woman in the TTRPG industry as a professional.
Yeah. Well, my experience of that, I guess, has been pretty unique because I started my transition 2 years ago, and so I've been with the companies though since 2017. So
Mhm.
a lot of my early experience was as male presenting, and so I was able to benefit from those kind of like social norms and expectations, I guess, and people's perceptions of me. Um, and I can absolutely see how that has changed
Mhm.
over the last couple of years. Not just with folks who have only just met me over the last 2 years, but with colleagues who have known me before. I'm not going to drag any of them or anything like
No, no, no.
that,
I mean, we
but
can speak generally speaking, and whether
yeah,
or not it's negative, speaking at least as a person of color, there's always
yeah,
this extra invisible or visible weight.
yeah. I think so. Yeah, I don't describe it as a weight at the moment, but like there's definitely um less expected of you, I think,
Mm.
a bit. Um, and also it's definitely takes more to get people to agree or see my point.
Generally, broadly speaking, we're not here. We don't have tea right now to
Yeah,
drag
I know,
anyone,
absolutely don't. I
and
absolutely don't. And you're not gonna get any.
not
Um,
not this time.
but
Next time, maybe.
no, yeah, exactly. But um I think, and just over this last kind of year as well, I've kind of um I can made a resolution, I guess. I,
Mhm.
not a bit like a bit on a personal journey,
Yeah.
but like, I also think that just you have to be like your own PR agent, right? You have to promote yourself, you have to kind of push yourself. So I've kind of stopped excusing myself from kind of like using um really clear and positive language about kind of what I do. So like updating professional profiles and stuff to say I'm award-winning publisher because I am, and I've worked in this and I've worked in that and I've got so many years experience in it. And so these are the things that I can do. Um, and so again, like notably when we just did a talk at UK Games Expo
Mhm.
about the kind of challenges that designers can face when it comes to designing for commercial reasons, for companies, for
Mhm.
who do need to worry about their bottom line and do need to worry about profit margins and that kind of thing. And so you see a lot of restrictions there, deadlines, pricing, all that kind of stuff. And I expect it, and I was like, okay, well, this is to show that me and my friends and colleagues from the around the industry are doing good work, and I want to promote them and that kind of thing. And I thought it may just get a few people, but it's a nice thing, kind of like on the CV, right? It's
Yes.
nice. It's nice to kind of have. And then we filled the room, and then we had to like they were getting like more chairs and stuff. So I was like, oh, people must be really interested in this and stuff like that. But also, the kind of interesting thing about that was that when I was introducing my fellow panelists, I made an effort to basically like boost them up and hype them up as much as I possibly could.
Excellent.
So I was introducing Sophie, who's just left Modifius, but is a designer primarily in board games, but also war games. And she's done some TTRPG work as well at various different companies. She's been at Steamforge, she's been at Games Workshop, she's been at all these different places. And then she also co designs with her partner and under the umbrella Needy Cat Games. Um, and so I introduced her as the most underrated designer in the industry because I believe that because like um, her partner is James, and the name has completely escaped me. But he's got a big name with Games Workshop design. So he's designed Necromunda, and he's done a load of work there. And so he's got some recognition. Like people kind of like know who he is, and they like revere his designs. Um, and he tends to get the accolades a little
Mm,
bit, not undeservedly, absolutely not. But I think it's interesting to observe
the
that
dynamic.
Sophie has they've often worked together on a lot of things. And so that's why I kind of introduced her as the most underrated designer in the industry because she was just that they have done so much work between them, but I don't think many people know who Sophie is, and they should.
Sophie Williams, to be very
Sophie
clear
Williams,
and very
yeah, yeah.
loud about it.
Yes, thank you.
Socials, bing, right there. And post that
Yeah.
it's going to appear. So, other than forcibly, to put the analogy, put the woman's name, put the disproportionately under recognized person's name first on the dissertation, what else could our parentheses male but peers in the TTRPG industries do to further uplift women who do a lot of work that isn't rated as highly but might be as much if not harder?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that it really comes down to ultimately um, such a huge kind of cultural change, really, um, because it is so subtle but pervasive and nuanced. It's like, because really we're talking about sexism in a
Yeah,
sense.
we're talking about fixing it
Yeah, absolutely. Um,
right
yeah.
now, right here. We're just going to solve
I
sexism.
don't I don't know. I don't know because I just think that like no one's gonna give it to us. We have to force our way there. We have to make it that. I do think that in the tabletop, the role playing game tabletop space right
Hmm.
now, there is a huge opportunity, particularly for independent designers and publishers. I think over the course of the next few years, we're going to see a big um, kind of shift in popularity to smaller games, smaller designers, or like smaller companies, independent publishers. That is a huge opportunity for women and minorities to kind of get their space at the table there. I think in terms of what traditional publishers can do, um, it absolutely is getting women further and further up the um, kind of managerial ladder, but like
Hmm.
in that kind of ladder, like you need if you're going to promote women, if you're going to promote people of color, then they need to be at the core of that. They need to have a seat at the table, like in those board meetings, at the heads of companies, and not just
Tokenized.
we'll hire this artist, we'll hire this writer, we'll hire this proofreader to make sure that we've got like a diversity quota.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it's something that I was really, really keen on when it came to developing Dreams and Machines, which is Modiphius's latest like original IP, like original setting.
Mm-hmm.
Again, it's a sci-fi setting.
Nice.
It's a little bit different. Like it's post-apocalyptic, but it's hopeful. It's on a distant colony of Earth that is completely cut off from it, and all that kind of stuff. And we wanted to make sure that again it wasn't just Western, kind of white centric ideas that were being written about, and that like that was the kind of default situation for these people, this new planet, right? And so we made sure that the entire creative team was more diverse in that sense, was as diverse as possible, so that we could get those different perspectives in. And that process also isn't about, you know, okay, so we want, for example, like, okay, so we want something like, Latino flavored. So Aida, we're going to come to you and we're going to ask for that. It's more just, we want you to work with us on this project. And what you bring to it is going to be unique and is going to be a different perspective from mine. So it wasn't about prescribing what people were bringing to the project for us. So it wasn't transactional in that sense.
Mm-hmm.
It's more like, we want to work with you
At the like a
and we
foundational
recognize,
level.
yeah, and we recognize your diversity. And we just know that organically that's going to bring new, like, ideas that we wouldn't have in a more white Western centric kind of development process.
I think that is an excellent way to do that. I hope everyone watching here and in the future is taking notes, frankly, because also people, women, minorities who do give this advice, who do share their experiences about the challenges and doing it nonetheless, um, frankly, should be paid for giving the advice again. So, links below. Make sure to pick up everything that Samantha is working on and her amazing colleagues and peers.
But like, there's also, I mean, please do go and buy like the spy game and stuff. Um, but also the kind of like, I'd push back on that, because for me, that like
Mm,
there's kind of there's no need to do that, because I happily offer this advice. I would happily offer a bit of coaching or advice to people, because, and again, touching on my transition, I feel like because of what we were talking about, I kind of have gotten to a small aspect of the reason why I think I've gotten to the kind of head of RPGs, head of brand type roles, is a little bit because I was male presenting. So seen as competent, seen as an authority, seen
mhm.
as someone who can do all this stuff. I proved it, obviously, because I'm still working there. But like, I think because it's so pervasive, like a little bit of that has influenced why I do that. So it's difficult for me, because I also recognize that I think I got the breaks I did because I was male presenting.
Okay, I appreciate and I recognize that that perspective absolutely.
Yeah, which
Nonetheless,
is,
support all of Samantha's products and games.
thank you. um, but yeah, like, and I reiterate, like, you have to be your own hype person, and you have to promote yourself. It's like the hardest thing, particularly for British people to do, because we're so disparaging about ourselves personally. But like, you have to be your own hype woman. Like, you have to be like, I'm doing this. It's fantastic. I can do that. I can also do that. I do all these things. I've got all this expertise. You can trust me with that. Um, and just don't stop saying that.
That's a really good segue because you also mentioned that Samantha said it here, indies are going to be the next big thing, small creatives. And I for sure have seen a shift um, in these very recent years away from the dominance of Wizards of the Coast and
Mm,
5e. Um, my first TTRPG was Dungeons and Dragons 5e. I'm the rules lawyer. I'm the note taker. I was very invested until all of a sudden I saw other worlds. And it's not that I dislike the indie, but I appreciate that there are other stores that do different things and might do different things better or more fun for me.
mhm.
And I've seen a proliferation of that, and I'm happy to see the diversity in storytelling. But there are creatives who also think, well, that's the default. I guess there's no space for me. And that's not true because we have um, whether you call them middle or small companies like Modifius, companies like Evil Hat, if you consider Paizo, not one of the big ones, but even much smaller indies. So your first piece of advice is to be loud and be confident in what you are offering and shout
Yeah.
that to universe. What other sort of advice would you give for indie creators who are wanting to create, to put their stake in the ground that doesn't take away from anyone else's space?
Yeah, I mean, I can offer a kind of businessy advice, I guess, but more, I don't, not in terms of like finance and numbers, because I'm not
Mhm,
great at
mhm.
that. But in terms of kind of branding and what your brand platform might be, it's definitely about thinking like what your unique proposition is to people. So, it's all very well maybe thinking, okay, I'm going to design the fantasy RPG that's going to replace D&D because we've got scores of them. Um, but so think instead, what is the one thing that you're not seeing that you want to explore in your game or that you want to see represented in your game? And through that, you can see what a unique proposition might be to your players. And unfortunately, because it's the society we live in, your customers.
Yes, sometimes. Mhm.
If you want to see like a financial benefit from it. And then you can do a bit of analysis if you want to actually get down into that. So you can do like a strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats analysis, a SWOT
Oh.
analysis.
Mhm,
So
mhm.
you just you think, okay, so what strengths would my game or my brand have? They don't have to be unique, but just like what strengths does it have? What's it good at? And then weaknesses, like what is it bad at, maybe? Um, and then opportunities, what opportunities you see in the hobby or in the market, and then what threats there might be to you. That could be your competitors and stuff like that, or that could be existential things like not really being able to afford a print run of stuff or logistics or stuff like that. So that just gives you some perspective of like um yeah, how you could do, and it helps you identify kind of what you're offering people
Mhm.
in terms of your game. Um, but the other thing, really, artistically, is that you could just really focus down on what you're making and kind of like why you're making it, and that can evolve and change as you make something. Like if you do any kind of art form, you're kind of discovering a little bit more as you go, right? Um, but there's kind of exercise you can do where you think, okay, well, I want to make this RPG. Okay, great. Why do you want to make that RPG? Oh, well, because I don't think there's this um, theme being explored that well. Okay, why is that important? Well, it's important because these reasons, like, we're not really talking about and it's going to be crass examples. I'm just going to pluck stuff out of thin air, like, well, because we're not really talking about mental health when it comes to this thing. Okay, uh and so why do that then? And you kind of keep drilling down, and you keep drilling down. Why is it important? Why would you do that? Why is it important? Until you really kind of crystallize your idea, and then you can be like, right, that's what I want to make. That's why I want to make it. The spy game was kind of very very similar. Not really seeing kind of modern RPG in the market. Yeah, we absolutely used 5e because it was going to be the most popular, and it's
It's
going to be easiest
accessible.
to accessible. It's going to be the most easy to convert people to. Um, but then actually, why make a game about spies? Okay, well, because spies are cool. Why are spies cool? Oh well, they can do really cool things, and they're very assertive and stuff. Why? Okay, why is being assertive important? Well, because maybe we're not, that maybe people want a confidence boost and stuff like that. Okay, well, why do that then? Or because maybe they're having trouble in their lives, and by playing this game, they can kind of practice being assertive, cool spies. and so you actually you start to kind of go away from like the surface level theme, and you actually get to like, why are playing tabletop games important, and why is your theme in particular important? So if you really wanted to, drill down into it, playing the spy game is about practicing being assertive and courageous, and kind of all of these things. um
Probably because there was so much introspection, uh, levels done to it, that it was even recognized with an Emmy nomination.
yeah, absolutely, it was. Yeah, I've forgotten about that a little bit recently, but yeah, no, it had been. um and so yeah, like, if you can drill down into that, that kind of can be your like guiding north star, right?
Yeah.
Where it really helps you focus in, because then as you're working, and you have to be diligent, and you have to drag yourself to the desk after a potential 9 to 5 job or shift work, like I was doing before Modifius, and you have to sit yourself down, and you have to give, you know try and get the energy, summon up the energy, have the spoons to do some writing work, do some design work, do some testing, or getting into the point where, like with Curse Captains of Cthulhu, now as we're recording, I'm working on like page references and indexing, and that stuff is like meticulous procedural work that is not very interesting. But if you're um, working as a publisher, independent publisher, or if you're working on your own on a project of a kind of scale of an RPG, then you have to do all that stuff too. You have to worry about logistics and print specifications and stuff like that. Um, and so, yeah, I guess, if you can, be a generalist, learn a bit about everything, um, and just try your hand at stuff too, because it is just experience at the end of the day. Um, and so the folks who are, the kind of big hitters who are leading companies, publishing companies, or stuff like that, they got there just through experience and applying themselves. They didn't have any kind of special source that no one else has. They got there through hard work, some luck, um, and the experience.
Yeah. And they are here, they are in the UK, they are in Europe. They are not exclusively centered in the US. That is not the center of the universe.
Yeah.
There is a thriving community here of indie creators who are at all levels doing it just for fun, who are at all levels looking to publish for fun or looking to make this a profession. And there are those here in the UK and EU who are being recognized for their work. I think this year, off the top of my head, Ita Reich from Rowan Brook and Deckard is up for award. Mousehole Press, I think that's just one person.
Mm.
Koriko, the journaling game.
Yeah. 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 Maybe.
So those may be exceptions, but they came from good stock that we are all sitting in here geographically, regionally, even.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Um, and Modifius has been going for um, just over 10 years now, pretty much. Um, and yeah, Chris started out as like three people. Chris, the owner, um, started out as like, three people in his back bedroom office situation, right? But it comes from somewhere. But yeah, there's a lot of work involved, and well done to all the people you mentioned and everyone that you didn't like, because it is hard, and it is like you have to be like kind of consistent, and you have to keep going.
But it's
um
rewarding, I think.
yeah, absolutely,
Even
like,
if it's not profitable, if you put in the effort, you get to tell a good story with your friends. And that is just as much a really crucial experience we're having in a world where connections are harder to maintain, especially as you get
mm,
older.
yeah,
And I'm never
definitely.
going to forget in my late 20s, early 30s, going and slaying the dragon in the fantasy world with my friends around my kitchen table.
Yeah, exactly. um I always, I always wonder what the retirement homes of like what, hang on, 40 or so years are going to be like with a bunch of like role players who are with like their with their nurses, and they're talking about how that one time they killed that person and they like took his stuff, and they're like, wait, what?
Oh man.
Because that's how we talk. Like,
And they'll be lore dumping on each other when they're like when they push all the little chairs, the rocking chairs in a circle,
yeah, playing D&D probably.
and probably rules lore. I guess that's how we did it in 3.5, but that's how we did it in 7 because I don't know how many versions it'll be
Yeah.
by then.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a I look forward to that future. Maybe the future will be that sort of uh science laden, space driven, futuristic setting will be that
Yeah.
sci-fi reality. And in the
Hopefully
meantime,
we hopefully we get to like use technology to uh kind of make our creations more a bit more tangible.
mm,
Um I don't know if it's necessarily going to be like VR with goggles on, but like, yeah.
that's already a thing.
Well, yeah, but like, I don't know, better.
But better, yeah. I can't imagine all of us sitting around our kitchen table with goggles on. That'd be clunky at the very least.
Yeah.
But to use your words, I can't wait to see what we will become at those tables in the near future. Thank
Yeah.
you so much for your time, Samantha. It's been a wonderful, wonderful chat.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you so much for having me on.
Yeah. Um, Tell us about everything that you want us to hear.
Right. Yeah, I guess. Well, if you want to support me, you can follow Black Cats Gaming around the internet. If you look for follow Black Cats on Twitch and on X, Twitter, you can find us there, or you can head over to blackcatsgaming.com or blackcatsgamingshop.com if you want to grab stuff. Um, we've got the Spy game out. It's been out for a few years now, and is our kind of the big game that we have. We've got a bunch of other smaller one-page RPGs and stuff like that, as well as Chevalier, which is a journaling game by Susie, who typically art directs and does our social media side of things as well. But that is a fantastic game about being a mecha pilot, being like a
Mm.
Gundam pilot, and the horrors of war. Because not just about cool robots, apparently. I didn't know that. I'm not a fan. Um, but that's a really cool game as well. And then if you kind of want to support me, then you can head over to like modifius.net or modifius.us, see what kind of games we publish. We got like a whole bunch of different things. And buying those games helps pay my wages. So that helps too, I guess.
And there's some banger good games. The ones you mentioned, the Black Hat Gaming, and the ones in Modivia as well. Banger games that I will continue playing.
Awesome.
And yeah, don't be a stranger these parts. If you need someone to play The Expanse, you know where to find me.
Absolutely.
And if you want to play with giant robots, I have heard of a writer UK based who has a model where you're in giant robots, but it's thirsty sword lesbians.
Nice. That's cool.
It could be something.
Yeah.
But that'll be it for us. Thank you for everyone else that is joining us, and we'll see you around. Bye bye.